Okay. She's paid. She's paid. She heads on one of Israel's leading firms in the field of family and inheritance law and has a unique expertise in managing risks and crises in the family, especially in families with ADHD. Moran has developed a method for financial agreements that deal with relationships. She has, just a moment. She has developed a method for effective divorce most valuable process, and it's between things, but it says DMPV, I guess you will explain it, which combines therapeutic tools in the legal process. And in recent years, after being diagnosed with ADHD herself, she has developed a method for handling divorces for families with ADHD. In 2017, she co-founded the Institute for Family Crisis Management, where she also served as CEO and lecturer in practical trainings in the field of family law, within which thousands of attorneys were trained. Hey, that's good. She currently serves as co-chair of the Family Law Committee in the Tel Aviv district of the Bar Association. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. And after this introduction, I can just leave and go home. It was such a beautiful introduction, so thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for coming today. I would like to share with you a different point of view for this situation and regarding behavioral of people. I just press the center, right? No, I don't. I need to. Yeah? I don't. Oh, yes. I say, okay. So people with ADHD have three times more likely to divorce than those without. And similarly, there is a study conducted in Israel by Dr. Shlomi Antebi in 2015 that reveals that children with ADHD are twice more likely to get divorced. Yeah, you can imagine that. Okay, so after this introduction, let me skip this one because as the introduction said, I am a lawyer and I specialize in managing crisis and risk in the family, especially with ADHD. And actually, I got into this field because of my diagnosis with ADHD, following my son's diagnosis. I have ADHD, hyperactive, and perfectionism. And in the last several years, I learned that 80% is much better than 100%. So this is very heavy for me to say that, but here I am saying that to you. As I was diagnosed, I started training behavioral, I'm sorry. See, this is my ADHD. I just hear him, and this is all I hear, him. Welcome to my world, and I'm happy to introduce you to my world. So thank you. I will, yeah, it will be, but I can, oh, no, but it's much better. Thank you so much for trying. Okay, so I got into the ADHD world after my diagnosis, and I started behavioral training for ADHD to change the patterns that I held all of my life. And through that, I was exposed to the fantastic world of ADHD. And I say fantastic because it's a fantastic world after you get to know it. Before that, it's very, very frightening world. So I began to notice that a large part of my clients and actually all of my employees in my law firm with ADHD symptoms. Lucky me, I magnetized them to my life. So in order to help them, I began studying training and in specialization with ADHD in the University of Bar-Ilan. And I'm supposed to get my coaching diploma in 2 months, so I will be able to help them to get more tools to help ADHD and divorce. And I quickly noticed that the main problem is communication. Wait, before you say, but everybody's got a problem with communication. ADHD people have a larger problem of communication because studies have shown that the brain is smaller in 3% than the general population, and they think differently, not methodically, but in a associative way, and they react accordingly. So just imagine that a person with ADHD listen to what you have to say, and at the middle of the sentence, the brain fills the gaps. He doesn't listen to you anymore, and then he responds accordingly. As a result of the divorce process, they found themselves, the people with ADHD, very frustrated. They feel that nobody understands them, and they were sometimes perceived as aggressive. And it doesn't even matter if it's a woman or a man. Over time, and with my experience with my clients, I developed a method that helps my clients get through the divorce proceedings and get tools to help them get the divorce proceedings with the ADHD problems. However, I couldn't ignore the fact that a part of the pattern, the behavior pattern that accompanies a part of ADHD is the aggression and anger. And most of them perceived as aggressive and angry people. And sometimes it leads to violence because they want to show everybody that they are not aggressive and they are very frustrated, so their aggression is coming out. Over the past few years, I've been researching the topic of ADHD, and I would like to share with you a different point of view and my findings, so perhaps it will be able to help other people. This one. Oh, by the way, all the photos in this presentation are for my associative way of how I perceive the things that I'm going to share with you. And this is one of them. This is the brain of an ADHD person. Before we dive into the topic that we all came to hear, I think we need to know what ADHD is. So ADHD is an attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Very long name. It's a very long spectrum and big spectrum. And it is neurobiological genetic developmental disorder that affects millions of individuals all over the world. And I have to say, on a personal note, before I proceed, that since I've been recognized with my ADHD, I think this is a present in my life, but it's only because I chose to break the patterns and break the cycle. Otherwise, people still suffers and still doing the same thing, and it ruined their life during the divorce proceedings, mostly. Contrary to what it usually thought, ADHD does not result from lack of attention. It's the opposite. It's rather an excess of attention and lack of regulation. And many people act as if they have ADHD, but in reality, they have difficulty paying attention. And because this is a cognitive difficulties, it can be changed through behavioral training to change behavioral patterns. On the other hand, people with ADHD were born this way. They have lack of dopamine in the brain. Well, dopamine is the attention hormone. It's actually a chemical in the brain that of pleasure, motivation, and focus. And people with ADHD lack this dopamine, and they are looking for a faster way to fill this dopamine in the brain. So you will see they do more extreme activities. They are more prone to addiction, more prone to fights. Actually, the fastest way to increase the dopamine in the brain is through arguments. So they fight a lot because it gets the excitement and get the dopamine to the brain. So the best way to treat this person, the adults, is through medication and behavioral treatment, and not only behavioral treatment. This is the difference between the two kinds. Okay, so ADHD has 9 main symptoms, and you only need 5 to consider yourself a person with ADHD. The first one is reluctance from prolonged mental effort and requires attention, such as homework, such as reading a book, project at work. The second one is difficulty sustaining attention in prolonged tasks, the short attention span between 5 and 15 minutes. 3 is difficulty completing required tasks in everyday's life, like people who start a task and quickly lose the concentration, or vice versa, concentrate so much on the task that they forget the rest. 4 is the distracted by everything, like I was distracted by the voice outside. And 5, forgetting the important details like names, dates, daily activities, such as returning calls, and etc. 6, they often seems not to listen to what it's been said. And 7, loss of belongings, people who leave the house and start to try to remember, did I lock the house? I didn't lock the door. Did I forget to switch or not forget to turn off the light, and etc. And actually, this kind of thoughts can really disrupt their day if they're not putting a stop to it. 8 is difficulty paying attention to details and errors of inattention, like I didn't read the question in the exam, I didn't pay attention to the sign, etc., etc. And 9 is difficulty in order and organization and deadlines. And if you identify 5 or more symptoms, I recommend to call your nearest doctor and get diagnosis. But in more serious manner, because it's genetics, it means that at least one of the parents have ADHD. So every parent who took their child to diagnose them with ADHD and sat in front of the doctor and didn't recognize nothing from the symptoms needs to be examined for himself, because it's genetics. Actually, I will give you one more statistic. There is a study that says that in 70% of divorce, one or both spouses have ADHD. 70, not 17, 70. It's a lot. So you can imagine that most of the divorces and most of the uncommunication between spouses is due to ADHD. These symptoms can cause some significant difficulties in daily lives, including in relationship and marriages. And most people associate ADHD with school, something trendy that only exists for children and overdiagnosed and with drugs. And I heard all kind of sentences regarding that, but it was only in the last decade that ADHD in adults began to study it in depth, and we were exposed to the world of couples who lives under the shadow of ADHD. And most of them were not diagnosed in their childhood or adulthood and became adults without tools to deal with the ADHD. And therefore, we heard the 3 spokespersons before me talking about the behavioral and the mental state of person as he become adult. You need to understand that in the past, the symptoms of ADHD were attributed to mental disorders, and they have the similar symptoms, And the drug treatment that was given was according to the mental disorder and not to the ADHD disorder. So it's only in the last few years that the community of scientists recognize ADHD with adults. Okay, they thought that after the age of 18, it's like poof, it disappears to the air, and there is no ADHD with adults after the age of 18. ADHD, yeah, this is the one. ADHD affects relationship in several ways. And many adults report that sex and intimacy are at the top of the list, following closely by explosive anger and the constant disruption that leads to exhaustion and thereby limiting alone time, relaxation, and normalcy in relationship. It is in the divorce process, the explosive anger can become a serious point of conflict if it's not controlled, and the stress of ending a marriage and trying to move on can be very hard for everybody. And it's very, very unbearable for people with ADHD, and up until a point that they can't go through this crisis. Often it's cause reaction inconsistent with the situation. This is at best, and aggression reaction up until violence at worst. Things take a new significance considering that the most adults over the age of 40 are undiagnosed and unaware of their ADHD. It's a lot, actually, most adults. So they are becoming the parents who raise their children with ADHD, and they're unaware of their ADHD. And it's even worse for women because their symptoms will often not include the hyperactivity. So most people don't think that people without hyperactivity have ADHD. Actually, they have ADD. It's under the same family, but it's still ADHD. It is important to remember that ADHD is more common than we know and we think. And it's a person socioeconomic status doesn't matter. It goes beyond gender, socioeconomic status, and actually most of the entrepreneurs, CEOs, artists have ADHD, has ADHD. Yeah, that's it. This is the one I wanted. for a minute, I thought I skipped the one. Okay, in a study concluded in 2011 in the University of Haifa in Israel, they examining the relationship between ADHD, men with ADHD, and their violence against their partner. It was concluded that the severity of the violence against the partner is directly proportional to the severity of ADHD symptoms, especially when it comes to psychological violence. And this is how we talked about the narcissist before. People with ADHD are very intelligent. This is why they know how to manipulate people, other people. And in recent years, it has been found that there is also a direct relationship between women's violence towards their partner and their ADHD symptoms. According to a study by a journal of the American Medical Association, revealed that the ones whose parents suffered from intimate partner violence are more likely to endure ADHD compared to those who are not exposed to this situation. And behavioral pediatrician has been saying that it's been increase of the psychological prescription of drugs for children in these situations. And there is another study reveals that children with ADHD who are not exposed to domestic violence, who are exposed to domestic violence, even if it's not directed to them directly, showed more symptoms of anxiety and depression, and they had to get drug treatment accordingly. Many of those with ADHD suffer from comorbidity. That is another disorder, such as ODD, depression, anxiety, addiction, in addition to the ADHD. And they're expected to have a very difficult life if they are not treated. Let me share several statistics that I found. There's a lot of statistics, but I want to share with you several of them. About a quarter of drug addicts have ADHD. That's because ADHD persons have more addiction probability than the general population. 87% of ADHD suffers from another disorder, and 56% of them have two other disorders. 51% of children with ADD, this is without the hyperactivity, and 77% of adults have another disorder. And listen to this, between 25 and 40% of children diagnosed with ADHD will develop an antisocial personality disorder or criminal behavior, and they have a risk, the risk is being higher when they have ODD or diagnosed with behavioral disorders. And parents with ADHD are more compassionate towards the children with ADHD, but also develop more anxiety and depression because of that. And people without ADHD are more angry towards children with ADHD because they don't understand how the brain is working. And parents with children with ADHD see themselves less good parents, less skilled of the role as parents, and they experience more stress and anxiety because of that. And when they have ODD, this is oppositional deficit order, it goes higher, and there is a big chance of getting depressed because of that and anxiety. This is actually my brain, I think. Yeah, this is the one. People with ADHD experience divorce crisis 100 times worse than the general population. 100 times worse. They have to deal with many fronts, such as the opposing party, the social worker, court, the judge, the children, the work, the family, the friends, a lot of fronts. So it feels like the world are closing in on them, and it's getting very, very tight space to be in. And if it's with the custody issues in hand, the stress could be even greater and impact the outcome up until the aggression and violence in the family. The courts today mainly attribute gender to violence, even though studies today shows that women and men are violent at the same ratio, but the intensity of men is higher. And there is a place examined ADHD in the family as one of the reasons to violence, and allowing the appropriate treatment and not according to gender classification or general population. Unfortunately, the courts and the specialists still don't recognize ADHD as a required different treatment, and therefore goes to the emotional behavior and not the behavioral behavior of people. And it caused many people to suffer from very long and very hard divorce proceedings. And this is why I think we need to examine it. I will give you one more statistics before I end my things. Studies have shown that 85% of prison inmates have ADHD, 85%, and they are undiagnosed and untreated because of the drug treatment that needs to go into the prison and the difficulty getting the drug treatment into prison. And I believe there is a direct connection between ADHD and domestic violence. And I believe that the more the courts reveal the dimension of ADHD among the population, the more couples will be able to divorce with agreements and domestic violence will decrease. Thank you.